during the 80s, during the 90s, and well, I wouldn't say that we have lost many battles, but we have lost a lot of battles. But every time, every time after one battle, we could say that we have, we are progressing, we are fighting to get the second independence. It's probably we get it. So it's true that we have lost a battle in 2011, but we are going to win the war. The win the war means that we are going to have the second independence. I don't know when, I don't know how, but what I'm sure of is exactly the way that our fathers, our grandfathers, fought against the colonial state, and it took them sometimes something like a century, 100 years, to get rid of the colonial state. We are going also to get rid of dictatorship, of the state of the corrupt elite. What happens during this period of time from 2011 to 2014 in Tunisia, that it was kind of progress, kind of being realized, because really in this period of time, 3 years where I was in charge, we have had the best constitution in the Arab world. We have had the real, for the first time, independent institution, etc. For the first time, Tunisians were very proud to be Tunisian. For the first time, Tunisians were free. For the first time, there was no torture. I remember that the first time I met with the high-ranking officer of the police and the army, I said, look, torture, that's finished in Tunisia. Torture is no longer accepted, and I will be extremely harsh against anybody, dealing with this kind of crime. This crime has to stop in Tunisia, and we have to get rid of this evil. And that's exactly what happened. So we lost this battle. We lost this battle because the democracy is now, the process is interrupted for a while. I'm not here to talk as a defeated people talking about a defeated battle. I'm here as a fighter for democracy, a fighter, and we are going to resume the battle. So to get rid of this, once again, can be once again for me a lost battle. But once again, we are going to win the war, even if the battle is extreme. The battles are becoming more and more difficult, because what's happening now in Tunisia and in the Arab world, okay, the counter-revolution in Tunisia, in Syria, in Egypt, everywhere, won the battle. But now, if democracy is in a mess in Tunisia, the counter-revolution also is a mess. The counter-revolution is also, facing a lot of trouble. Egypt is now a failed state. Tunisia is a failed state. And people now, they can compare between the time when the revolution was in charge and when the counter-revolution is in charge. They can compare. They didn't improve their economic situation. They lost everything. And this is why I expect that in the near future, there will be new explosion, a new wave of protest, a new wave of people taking to the street, asking for their freedom, asking for Indonesia for the restoration of the democratic state, etc. So once again, I want to be very clear. I'm not here as a defeated person defending, is trying to explain how do we fail. Of course, I know how. What was the problem? I can assure you that the main problem is not internal. The main problem is that there was a veto against the process of democratization in Tunisia, and this veto comes from the Algerian dictatorship, from the Emirati dictatorship, from the Saudi, etc. There was a veto of all those regimes, and they did everything. They did everything, to sabotage the transition, and they did everything, I can assure you that the dictatorship in Algeria was extremely worried about what's happening in Tunisia, and they did everything, sending terrorists, etc. And the Emirati put a lot of money, to bribe politicians, to bribe media, etc., etc. So this battle was extremely harsh. We lost it, but we have learned a lot about how to fight now the next time our enemy. And the process is not going to stop. mainly because the very reason behind the explosion of 2011 are still there, and they're worsening: poverty, corruption, brutality, etc., etc. So this is why I say the volcanoes. I prefer always the image of volcanoes to the image of the Arab Spring, with the quick birds singing and etc. Because the reality, in fact, was very, very different. Reality of the so-called Arab Spring was blood, violence, chaos, etc., etc. So this is this is why I prefer the image of volcano, and this is why I expect that the volcano will burst. But politicians, unlike geologists, geologists, they know that the volcanoes are going to explode, but they don't know when. I am not sure that this next explosion in Tunisia will be next month or next year. I don't know. In Egypt, I don't know. But I'm absolutely sure that the explosion would come. And then we Democrats, we have to be there. We have to be very ready, to to lead this this dream of the second independence. That the fact, at last, we will have a state of law and order, a state of real independence, a state of equality, a state of dignity. Because the main problem in our country is the word dignity. The word dignity. This is why during the revolution, the most important word was dignity, because all these people, feel that their dignity has been suppressed by this corrupt and brutal elite that took power, and that they are really considered by the whole population as a kind of internal occupation. I always say that Egypt is occupied by its own army. Algeria is occupied by its own army. It's not the army of the state in the service of the population, but in the service of this corrupt and brutal elite. And we are going to get rid of this corrupt and brutal elite, and we are going also to achieve this dream of the second independence. So please, if you want to discuss with me as a fighter, fighting for a new chapter of the Arab Revolution, and not why have you failed and what you expect. I expect that we are going to fight, that we're expecting to win the war. And what I call here, I have here the name of the of the 40 person in prison in Tunisia, and I always say that those are our prisoners of war. They are not victims of injustice. They are not. They are prisoners of war. We are in war against this corrupt elite, and those are our prisoners of war. I would like here to salute this prisoner of war. I would like also you to bring them your support by any meaning, because when you have prisoner of war, you have to deal with this problem, because it's a human problem, and to do everything you can do for the release. But behind this prisoner of war, you have the whole population, which actually was finally the real. Egypt is a huge prison for the Egyptians. Tunisia is a huge prison. Algeria is a huge prison. You have the whole population, which is behind bars, invisible bar, but behind bars. So those prisoners of war, we have to deal with them from the as human rights activists, but we must never forget that behind them there are millions of people who are prisoners, and then we have to deal with them with a political point of view and not a humanitarian point of view. The different, but human rights activism point of view and political point of view, those are the main way to deal with this problem. Treating the symptom and treating the disease. I'm a physician. I always analyze the problem, the social problem, those are the symptom and those the disease. We have to tackle the symptom and we have to tackle the disease. Well, I'm going to stop here. I thank you for your patience, and now I will try to answer your questions. Thank you.
Before we start the questions and answers, I would like to recognize and thank our staff for helping putting this together. Jacob and Ali, I think they're out there. Colin, Brenna, and Loretta, thank you very much for your help. start with the first question. My question about Tunis gave a very good example of the Arab Spring. It was, for the longest time, the only successful example of the Arab Spring. Eventually, Tunis elected someone that no one heard of him or his name, and all of a sudden he was famous. And I had this question I asked my good Tunisian friends about the secret. How did unknown person becomes the president all of a sudden? So I would like to hear from you. What do you think the mechanism, and how did the Tunisian people think that all of a sudden he's the savior and they elected him?
Look, after a revolution, the level of expectation is extremely high. People would think that, all of a sudden, you will have jobs, you will have good services, etc., etc. And what happened in reality is that during this after revolution, it's a period of political instability. And during the political instability, the economy stops. In Tunisia, we have the tourism was, we didn't have more than 10,000 people instead of millions before the revolution. And then the economy was also at standstill. And the situation, in fact, the economic situation was worsening after the revolution. And it was very hard to explain to the people, look, after revolution, we need, to reconstruct our country. It takes a long time. It's not a matter of like this and everything will be okay. So because of this instability, because of this period, very dangerous period, etc., you have a lot of populists, would come say, look, they are all incapable of resolving your problem. I am going to solve your problem. And unfortunately, that works. And also, what I have discovered during this period that I was extremely shocked and surprised by the fact that the very means of democracy was used against Democrats and against democracy itself. For instance, freedom of expression, we have given freedom of expression to everybody, and this freedom of expression was used against us by the corrupt media with a lot of money coming from the Emirati, coming from it. And this corrupt media were all the time, behind us saying, hey, they are incapable, they are untakeable, etc., etc. And so there are, in fact, a lot of many reasons that participate to this situation. But as I told you, okay, they have done everything to sabotage the revolution. And now the counter-revolution is in charge. And everybody knows that in Tunisia, that the situation is worsening day after day. Now, Tunisians are queuing for bread, are queuing for water, are queuing for everything. So probably this would be a good lesson. Germans have elected Hitler. Is that true? Is it true? So it was a good experience for them because now I think they will never elect somebody like Hitler. And I think people need to make their own experience. You cannot ask the Tunisian people, to be more educated or more wiser than the American people or the German. The American people, 40% have elected somebody like Trump. So please be very kind with Tunisian people, even if they made a great mistake in electing somebody who's populist. But you know that we are living in the area of populism. It's the disease of democracy that we are going to have to tackle this problem.
Thank you. We have these cards, but I don't really like the cards. But since this is covered on Jazeera, so your face is not going to be shown, and this microphone doesn't have very long cords. So, yeah. Don't you feel?
Dr. Marzouki, while the U.S. has been pressuring Tunisian President Kais Saied to restore constitutional democracy, the European Union is granting his government millions of dollars in return of stopping African immigrants coming from Tunisia. What do you make of the lack of international pressure on Qais Said as one-man rule? And my second question, I would like you to assess the role of counter-revolution and democracy backsliding in Tunisia. Thank you.
What about the first question? The relationship of the Western government, not only the American government, the European government, the relationship to our revolution, our democratic revolution. I always say that we were very, very disappointed at the time because we were expecting more and more help, but we didn't get it. And the reason, a lot of reasons, I wouldn't say that the Western government preferred to deal with dictatorship, because dictatorship are, well, they would obey their order, or that maybe use more, they would use them, to fight against terrorism, and maybe they are, it's easy for dictatorship to normalize with Israel, etc., etc. So what I have seen during my mandate is that the Western government were not very, very happy with our democratic revolution, and they didn't do any. I wouldn't say, okay, they said that's good, etc. But when I asked that problem, the main problem in Tunisia is economic problem, and I asked, could you do something about the debt? Could you relieve us of the debt? I said, no, we cannot. I said, look, you have a million and billion of dollars, of money stolen from the Tunisian people in your banks. Can you help us to restore to this? Oh, no, we cannot. You have to go to the judge, etc., etc. So, and after the coup with Marshal Sisi, I was surprised to see that all the Western government were very, very happy with this. That they didn't have any problem to deal with this dictator, this bloody dictator. So, well, for the moment, I wouldn't say that we are going to. First, what I am repeating to the Tunisian people, the Arab people, we have to rely on ourselves. Forget about any Western help. We have to rely on ourselves. When I talk about Western, I talk about government, because we rely and we all have deep, good relationship with the civil society. And I can assure you that without the help of the civil society, like Amnesty International, like Human Rights Watch here in Washington, I wouldn't be probably here. I wouldn't be killed in the 90s, on the 80s. So we believe that we can have good relationship with the civil society, but we don't rely on the government. For the government, their interests are with the dictatorship. It's obvious. It's not with the democratic government. But I wouldn't say that we are going to make our democratization against those government, but we are going to promote our democracy without their help. This is my. And now, of course, they make a lot of pressure. They make a lot of statements, but it's very, very, In fact, nobody takes it seriously, because when they see that how Sisi is treated, how Ben Salman is treated, etc., they know that, in fact, some statement just, to the for public relation, but that's all. The second question is the role of the counter-revolution. The counter-revolution is internal and also regional. What's the main important things I have noticed during this mandate is that, in fact, the upper hand in the economic and political problem in our region is no longer. I would say that the regional power like Iran, Israel, the Emirati, the Saudi, they have the upper hand. They are the power who decided what's going to happen in our region. No longer the United States or even Europe. And this is the shift of power that was, it's very, very new, that the Emirati, that the Saudi are no longer client. They are working for their own interest, and they have decided that they will never allow any kind of democratic state in the region. And this is, even if the United States of the Europe would say, no, we would like to, they would say, no, this is our region, and we're going to impose our point of view. And this is what's happening. So now we are, as Democrats, our enemy who was leading the counter-revolution is mainly regional power, mainly the Iranian, the Israeli, the Saudi, and the Emirati. I think for all this for power, no way that Algeria also, no way to let the Arab people, become democratic states or become. This is a very new situation.
Thank you. I have a question here. I'm gonna borrow the microphone. Or come close here and ask your question. Lawrence,
Sure.
I don't think you.
Yeah,
Identify your name and.
William Lawrence, American University. I think that there are external and internal factors, and I would even agree with you. The external factors are more important in terms of the grand scheme of things. But getting to an internal factor that's not often asked. We know the questions that are often asked, but let me ask one that's not often asked. The Tunisian left didn't, in the end, really completely stand up for democracy. Your sort of secular half of the spectrum. One of the parties backed the coup, another one was, the UGTT was divided, all of that. And they were espousing that old Arab nationalist discourse and all that. So I was just wondering if you could take a look at the left half of the Tunisian political spectrum and ask, why so many weren't willing to defend democracy.
Good question.
The main difference between the process of democratization in the Arab world and Eastern Europe or Latin America, there's a big difference in the intervention of the political Islam. You didn't have Christian political Christianity or in South America or in Eastern Europe, but in our region, the intervention of the political Islam was massive for democracy, because when this is political Islam is a violent political Islam like Qaeda, like ISIS, etc., etc. This was the divine gift to the dictatorship. The divine gift to the dictatorship because it allowed the government of Syria, everyone, to say, hey, we're fighting against this terrorism, this bloody Islamism, etc. And they, in fact, it was not only the dictatorship didn't get only the support of the Western government, but also the middle class. The middle classes in our countries, joining dictatorship because they were afraid of Islamism. This was the main difference. And now, of course, in Tunisia, we didn't have this violent political Islam. On the contrary, we have had this part of the moderate political Islam accepted to be and to participate to the process of democratization. And for me, it was something extremely important for democracy because it meant that we have one part of the spectrum of Islamism. I am secularist. I didn't become Islamist, but many Islamists, became Democrats, and this was for me gain. We gained this part of that. And this is what I try to explain to my friend from the left, from the Arab nationalists, etc., saying, hey, it's extremely important for us to have this part of political Islam with us. They said, no, we cannot believe them. They are extremely dangerous, etc. So, because of the fear of Islamism, part of the middle class and part of the leftists, etc., they sided with the coup, and this is exactly the same problem today everywhere. So what I am trying to say, everybody said, please forget about this divided between Islamists and secularists. This is not the problem. This is not the issue. The issue is now the divide is between Democrats and anti-democrats. This is the real issue. But this kind of discourse for the moment doesn't work very much. and I'm sorry to say this. And so the political Islam is part of our society. We cannot get rid of it. How to deal with it? This is what I'm telling all my friends. I have heard of one of the Algerian prime ministers told me that a good Islamist is a dead Islamist. They say, look, what does it mean? Do you want the third of our population to die? This is the way of thinking of those people, So for the moment, being a secularist, accepting to work with Islamists and saying that the divide is between Democrats and anti-Democrats and not between secularists and Islamists, this is the battle of the idea that I'm trying to gain.
Thank you. Please, anyone have a question, come here and ask it. Hassan.
Somewhere else? Oh. No, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this enlightening lecture, I would say conversation. Three quick questions. As Americans, pro-democracy, what can we do to support the case of democracy in Tunisia? Given that our strong allies in the European Union are kind of scared that any collapse in the regime in Tunisia would have those big waves of illegal immigrants to Italy and other places. This is one. Number two, 24th of December, local elections in Tunisia. And that's step one towards regional elections. And then the second legislative room with refusing monitoring from the international community by President Said. What could you say about that? Number three, the fight against political Islam, in the view of many observers, turned to be a fight against Sunni Islam versus all the support to Shia Islam, even political Shiism, hashtag Iraq. Do you think this is the case? Or we are in the era where all political Islam, whether it's political Sunnism or political Shiism, is part of the past? Thank you.
Let me answer the last question because it's very, very easy. For me as a Democrat, whether it is a Sunni political Islam or Shiite political Islam, for me it's the same thing. You have the same dictatorship in Saudi Arabia, the same dictatorship in Iran. So for me, it makes no difference. And I would like to salute the fight of the Iranian people and mainly the women in Iran, because they are also fighting for our common values. Now about what could the American government do for, you probably know that I have been sentenced to 4 years in prison because I'm supposed to be a traitor. And a traitor in Tunisia is somebody who go to the foreign country and asking, the foreign government to intervene in the sovereignty of Tunisia, etc., which is, of course, kind of hypocrisy because Tunisia is not a sovereign state. Tunisia is, like many Arab countries, I wouldn't say under direct occupation, but it's a state who have lost sovereignty since the coup. But I'm not afraid to say that democracy is everywhere the same message, the same problem, and that we Democrats, we have to support democracy everywhere in the world because it did the same battle. So I would say that you American, the civil society of America, you should support the fight of the prisoner of war. You have here. Let me just give you some name because you should know that human suffering is important. Political prisoner, of course. You have lawyers, you have journalists, you have member of parliaments, you have politician, you have of course you have head of parliament Rashid Ghannouchi, Nuruddin Bhiri, Sahbi Atiq, Mahdi Mangarbiya, you have member of parliament Dean of Laws, Shawkat Bid, Member of Parliament, Yusri Dali, etc. Those people were harassed by Ghazi Shawashi, Rida Bahash, Isam Shabi, Abdulhamid Zlasi, Jawhar Ben Barak, Shaima Isa, Khayyam Turki, Kamal Tayyib, Riyad Tayyib. You have Maher Zaid, Muhammad Affas, Nidal Saudi, Abdul Latif Alwi, Bashir Shabi, Rashid Khiyari. All those people were in prison or attacked or harassed or obliged to go into exile. The lawyer Abdurazak Kilani, man. All those people are fighters for freedom, and you have to support them. I don't know, the way to support all those people is maybe you can write with the congressman or do everything. It's up to you, to know that you have freedom fighters behind the bar in Tunisia and everywhere, and it's our duty, all of us, to support them. Now, for the political point of view, I always say, please, we are not asking you to send the military, to liberate Tunisia or to impose democracy. We all have seen the outcome of this kind of policy in Iraq. Please, we are not interested in this kind of policy. We just want you not to help our dictator. That's the only thing. Don't help them. Don't give them money. Don't help them, because in fact you are not going to help Tunisia. You are going to help the dictatorship. We are going to help this regime to last, and this regime lasting would mean that more and more suffering of Tunisian people and delaying the time of liberation. Now, about the European, they are afraid, of course, of the flow of economic refugees coming from the south. But in fact, it's the case now. And it's the case now because of the dictatorship, because of poverty, because, as I told you, Tunisia is in a mess now. Tunisia is an impoverished country, the economy is at standstill, have more and more jobless people, etc. And in fact, the dictatorship is creating the very reason that push people, to immigrate. So it means nothing to say we are afraid of a flow. You already have this flow, and you have already this flow because of the policy you are supporting. And so the only way, if you want to stop this flow, is in the country to promote democracy, to promote stability, to have kind of a Marshall Plan for the whole region. This is the only way, to tackle the problem. Otherwise, you are just treating the symptom of the disease. You are just giving aspirin to somebody who has a cancer. You can give him as much aspirin as you want. He will die of cancer.
Thank you. By the way, Hassan, if you would like to help on Tunisia, I think there are two people here, Radwan Masmoudi and Rujid Awadi, with support of Hassan Amesh, been doing lots of great work promoting democracy in North Africa, mainly Libya and Tunis. So if you want to get in touch with them, to organize this, I'm going to take names, and then I'll call them one. Hassan, and
Robert.
Ismail, random, Radwan,
Omar.
Jimmy.
Muiz, Summer, Naima. We start with Jim here, former Congressman Jim Moran.
Well, thank you very much, Khalid, and I want to thank you, Dr. Marzouki. Because when you were president of Tunisia, even though it was too brief a period, in my point of view, because you were not actually elected, but notwithstanding that, you did your best to root out corruption. And I thought that was a good period in Tunisia's history, although unfortunately, I think you finished about 9th in the last poll. So, of course, you've been exiled, and I can understand that given some of the strong words you've had for Kais Saied. So I hope you stay out of the country, frankly, for your own sake.
Welcome.
But you had a very hopeful message but I don't think that that hopefulness is supported by the reality on the ground. Um, uh, in every area where the Arab Spring took hold initially, it's been quashed. It's been quashed by monarchies, particularly the Emirates have worked with the Wagner Group in Russia to suppress democracy. They're trying to do so in Tunisia, but certainly they have in Libya and
Syria.
they're very much in Syria. They're trying to do the same in Sudan, et cetera, supporting Hemeti. But the problem seems to be you have, and you mentioned how Hitler was elected, and yet he was able to take over the country because while the vast majority of the opposition, and the opposition constituted 73% at one point, but they couldn't get their act together. They wouldn't work together. They wouldn't come up with a common leader. They all wanted their own interests to be served. And you have similar situations in Tunisia and many other countries, but we're talking about Tunisia. The unions, for example, are extraordinarily unproductive.
Sure.
And in order for a country to get on its feet and to have a sustainable democracy, it has to have a strong economy. That individuals have to have some value into themselves. In other words, they have to be a component of some productivity. They have to be needed. They have to understand they are needed in the economy, which means you need a certain amount of free enterprise, in my opinion. But when organized labor, which constitutes a large portion of the political power in the country, was asked to restrain some of the wages that they had, so many of the industries hired far more people than they ever needed, and they knew that. And a lot of them were never even going to work. So but they said, no, that's not my problem. My problem is to keep these people employed. So they kept them, and they had sufficient political power to insist upon that. So first of all, that cripples the economy. The Islamists don't realize that the economy is where it's at. They think it's, a more conservative orthodoxy that will be the saving grace, although the Ennahda party seems to be more moderate than most other Islamic parties. But we haven't had, it doesn't seem as though we have anybody making that case to rise above the various political divisions that constitute Tunisia today. And until they do that, make that case, you're not going to get the foreign direct investment. You're not going to get European money from the World Bank and so on, even though Saeed thinks he can get it. And maybe he'll get a little of it, he ought not, until they fix their economy. You know the economy. And so it seems that one of the reasons I'm here is it seems as though you were their best bet, and yet they don't understand, they don't realize it, and you're kind of restricted to talking to like-minded people here in Northern Virginia. So I guess the underlying point is, how can you be so Pollyannish optimistic in face of the reality that faces Tunisia today?
This morning, I told the audience that, in fact, I would qualify myself as a busy optimistic person. Busy optimistic person. This is a concept invented by Palestinian writer Emil Habibi. He said, "I am a busy optimistic person," which means that really the situation, as you say, is dire. The situation is extremely difficult. So how can you afford to be optimistic? And the other way, as I told you, we spent more than 8 decades, to get rid of the colonial state, and we lost a lot of battle, and we have a lot of suffering, etc., etc. I see here my friend, my Algerian friend. imagine that in 1958, you know that the Algerian rebellion seemed to be out. You remember that you have had the time the General Massu and so that they really destroyed everything in Algeria. And imagine that at the time somebody would tell you that, hey, how can you be optimistic about the future of Algeria? Everything is burned, and here the French are there for the next millennium. And probably you would have been very, very courage to say, no, we will be free in 4 years, only in 4-year terms and not in 4 decades. So in fact, you have always, in this life, you have many reasons to be optimistic. You have many reasons to be pessimistic. I am, as a politician, as a leader, etc. I have to be optimistic. I have to tackle to encourage the young generation to say, look, my generation, we did everything. The generation of my father, my grandfather, did everything to get rid of the colonial state. My generation, we have done everything in our to get rid of this dictatorship, this internal colonialist. Now it's up to you now to move forward. You don't have to give up. So this is my message to the new generation. Now, of course, we have to tackle the very specific problem. When you have said that I was not elected. I was elected by the Constitutional Assembly, like here in the United States. You don't have direct election, but you have exactly the same in Tunisia. And I tackled this very specific, very difficult problem of what kind of politics we do with the unions. Well, the problem of the economy, etc., etc. I know how difficult for a leader, for a politician, to deal with very, very specific problem. I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk about this very specific question because we would need 1 month to talk about. The only thing I would like to tell you that we are not going to stop. The process is on the way, just like the process of liberating our country from the colonial state was on the way at the moment, and it hadn't to stop. We are actually everywhere in the Arab world. We are on the process, and this process will never stop. I don't know whether we will have a happy end. I don't know. Maybe it will be a new wave of failures. I don't know, but I know that the process is now on its way, and it will not stop. This is the only thing I guess. And I prefer to believe that behind the destructive forces, we see that there are also constructive forces behind the scene, and I rely and I want to bet on the constructive forces.
Thank you. So, I want to just go back to the political figure list that Dr. Mohamed Marzouki has mentioned. I just want to mention that that list is really, they belong across the political spectrum. It's not like Islamist only, contrary to what Ben Ali has said when he scapegoated the Islamists in the beginning, and the left and the rest of the opposition came with him in the beginning, and at the end, I think he came back against them. This guy is, he's really targeting everybody in Tunisia. And for this, I want to add one more person to the list. I'm here to represent my brother-in-law. He's a guy who came to the United States just like me, and he is a very accomplished guy. He finished a PhD in mechanical engineering, and then he has like close to 10 patents in lasers. He was working for Seagate. You heard about Seagate in the 80s in Minnesota, and then his passport, is no longer valid. He asked the Tunisian embassy to renew his passport, and they said you have to go back to the country. And at the time, there is no way anybody can go back to the country. So Seagate has did everything because he's a very good guy,
and he's a very accomplished guy. They sent them to Malaysia. Just they have they have an office up there to do the work. And then I think in Malaysia, if you don't have a passport, a valid passport, you stay there a few months, and then he have to immigrate to Australia. Since then, I think in the 80s, he was in Australia. The only time he left Australia is 3 times. One, he made it to Hajj. The second thing, after the revolution, he came to Tunisia in 2011, 2012, and he came back quickly. And then the third time, this last Wednesday, he went with his family, his wife, and his kids. And then he was apprehended from the airport. And they took him, now it has been 7 days. And then they're slapping, all kinds of, accusation of terrorism and everything. This guy, I think, he doesn't have anything to do with the terrorism. But then we're trying, can you imagine that the lawyer himself, that his brother appointed for him, he's afraid to speak to us, the lawyer himself, because this guy, Qais Said, put his hands on the executive, on the legislative. The judges are afraid. The judicial system, the judges are afraid. The lawyer, they are telling my sister, I'm speaking here against the wishes of my sister. She said, don't speak. We're afraid we're going to be next and everything. I said, I have to speak up against this. So this is what I'm mentioning to you. And I think Jazeera is propagating this. I want this to go everywhere. Human Rights Watch and everything. His name is Mohammed Ali Khalif, Mohammed Salah Khalif. Mohammed Salah Khalif. So this is all I'm saying. Thank you.
That's Robert.
Thank you. I don't know if it'll reach. Will Jim? Will it reach? Okay.
Thank you. I'll be quick. Robert Schroeder with International Investor. Geographically, all of Western Europe is closer to Tunisia than it is to Ukraine.
Yeah.
You must have some perspective when you see Western Europe and the United States now totaling $100 billion for Ukraine's sake. How much would it have taken for Tunisia to resist those outside forces you spoke of?
You have answered the question. You have answered the question.
Randy, Ismail, your turn. Here.
Shukran, President.
Can you come
Yes.
to the microphone, please?
Yeah. Thank you. Ismail Royer from the Religious Freedom Institute here in DC. Thank you so much, President Marzouki, for this discussion. And my question is, and forgive me because it's not very precise. I'm kind of formulating it as I ask it. But when we see that, for example, in Egypt, they threw, the people threw out the dictator, and then there was a sort of counter-revolution, unfortunately, that brought back in someone possibly worse. Likewise, Sudan, we see that similar pattern. Tunisia, unfortunately, we saw something similar. Is this pattern, is there something here that is sort of endemic to the Arab world that needs to, that the fact, that these factors need to really be, and you've touched on that a little bit, that these factors have to be completely eliminated in order to stop that pattern? Or is it meddling from people like UAE and Saudi, as you mentioned, that if it weren't for that we wouldn't see that pattern going? So I'm kind of like wondering if it's sort of a but-for, this meddling is a but-for situation where if it weren't for that, then we would not. Yes, you might have some challenges and things like, as you mentioned, about the difficulty of dealing with high expectations after a revolution. That's just sort of part of the nature of revolutions. But is this meddling something that if it were not there, we wouldn't have be seeing this pattern? Thank you.
This is better microphone.
Well, when we have had this, as you know, the revolution began in Tunisia, and I would say that I wasn't very surprised to see that very soon it came to Libya, and then to Egypt, and then to Yemen, etc. Why? Because it's the same political system. You talk about the pattern. In fact, it was the main political system, which means that the political Arab political system is based on the rule of one man, of one party, of one ideology, of one family, of one social class, and the others, are they are, in fact, they are named citizens, but in fact they are not citizens. They are second-hand citizens, if I say. And this political system is exactly the same everywhere. So when the Tunisian people revolt against this political system, they say, hey, this is exactly what we're suffering from. So we have to deal exactly with the same problem, the same way. The Egyptian too, etc. And this is why we have had the counter-revolution. The counter-revolution because the Saudi, the Emirati mainly, etc. They were extremely afraid because they knew that, in fact, they were targeted by this republic, the revolution. It was not only against the dictatorship in Tunisia, it was against the principle of dictatorship, the way that the Arab were government for many centuries. And this is why they put all the means, the money, etc., to sabotage, to blockade this. And this is why I would say that now the fight is between people trying to liberate themselves from this brutal, violent, corrupt elite, and then this corrupt, brutal elite, they want to hold power and to stay in power for life. And it's, in fact, we're trying in the Arab country, to get rid of this political system and to bring a new political system. And it happens that this new political system, we want it to be a democratic system and not, in fact, we have experienced it, a lot of socialist political system, royal political system, everything. And now we are quite sure that what we need really, if we want to get out of this poverty, of this corruption, etc., is a democratic system. But we even if the democratic system, the Western democratic system itself must be, I wouldn't say renewed, but it must be adapted to our situation. And then we can, when I say it must be adapted to our situation, don't misunderstand me. I'm not just talking about a kind of democratic dictatorship like, our leaders. I mean mainly that we have to link social justice and freedom. This is the only way that we can have a solid and a sustainable democracy. It's to link freedom with social system. In fact, we badly need a kind of democracy, like Scandinavian democracy. But liberal democracy, like here in the United States, with the shift between freedom and social justice, it won't work. This is my experience. We have to deal with it because people are expecting not only freedom, but they are expecting social justice. When the dictator and the populist talk to the people, say, "Hey, freedom is nothing. We are going to bring you social and economic development. Look, like in China." And in fact, they didn't bring anything. They didn't bring freedom. They didn't bring social and economic development. And this is why they have to disappear. They are not the solution, they are the problem.
Thank you. I'm going to break. We didn't have ladies yet, so we'll have sum up. And then Radwan.
Hello, President Marzouki. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experiences with us here today. As a prominent human rights activist and author, could you highlight the key principles that guided your political philosophy in the Arab world and how these principles influenced your leadership?
Thank you. Well, this is his point.
I'll just give you an example.
That's working. So.
I think your question, if I can translate this, is how can you be a politician and a human rights activist at the same time? Is this your question?
Kind of. I mean, it kind of hits on the point, but it's just kind of like how, like being a human rights activist and author, like what were the key principles that you could highlight and that how it influenced your leadership? So in a way, yeah.
Well, I would just give you an example because it may be easier for you and even easier for me. You know, I am very unpopular in Tunisia, very unpopular among leftists, among the middle class. I am considered as a traitor to my social class. And I am very unpopular among socialists, and I'm very unpopular among Arab nationalists, etc. Why? Because they say that I am working with the Islamists. And I am very unpopular also amongst another, you know, because they think that, I am criticizing their policy. They think that I'm saying that all the time that they were part of the failure of our revolution because they were trying to have, to kind of agreement with the counter-revolution, etc. So I am very unpopular, in fact, everywhere. I'm very unpopular everywhere. I'm considered as a traitor to my social class, traitor to the leftists, traitor to Islam, etc. And why I'm so unpopular, etc. Because I do really think that you have to stick with your values, mainly with human rights values. Look, for instance, I used to say to the leftists and to the nationalists, Arab nationalists, etc., to the secularists, look, I am a secularist, I am even a leftist, I can say that I am an Arabist, but I am a human rights activist, which means that no, I cannot accept any human rights violation to Islamists. And because I am Democrats, I accept that if they won the election, we have to let them in a government. If they lose the election, they have to go. But you cannot make a coup just because you don't like them, etc. And then I talk with my friend from London. Look, your policy, trying, to be very swift and very Christian, I would say, with your enemies, forgiving, etc., and trying even to it won't work. You etc. So when you stick to human rights values, it's very, very difficult, to have to be accepted by the different political parties. But what's the other solution? To become cynical, to become a kind of Putin, to become what's the other solution? So in fact, we badly need people sticking to the human rights values, and the human rights values are very simple. You have just to read the Human Rights Declaration, and then you have all the things that you should do and things that you shouldn't do. And then human rights, the Declaration of Human Rights is my Bible. I wouldn't say that, or my Quran, or my second Quran, but for me, it's everything which is in the Human Rights Declaration. That was my guideline in all my life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Radwan? Is it on?
I don't think. Is it on?
Yeah, it's working.
Very close. Yeah, hold it very close.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your time and your kind remarks. I am a student of economics and math, so this kind of influences my approach to thinking. Well, I think it's important to understand what exactly the people of Tunisia did the revolution upon. And I think your analysis was quite brilliant in the fact that the Tunisian state was made up as a police state from the time of independence. So to that end, the people did the revolution on that police state, right? So after your time in the presidency, who came to power is al-Baji Qa'id al-Sibsi. Baji Qaid al-Sibsi is a symbol of the ancien regime of Bourguiba. He was in the government during the time of Bourguiba. When he came into power and formed a government with the Nahda, this coalition passed through the law of al-Tasalah al-Idari, which gave amnesty to all the people that committed corruption during the previous 50 years of independence. This is the true counter-revolution. The counter-revolution of Qais Said, we agree upon it, but this is the first counter-revolution. This is the first betrayal of these revolutionary ideals that the people fought for. And to that extent, I fall under the understanding that the people, that this political class that assumed power post-revolution, are the first to have betrayed the revolution. They are the first to have committed the counter-revolution. Now, on the economic side, the government post-revolution received a lot of funds, whether they were grants, whether they were loans from partners all around the world. What did they do with this money? They bloated the public sector. They did not spend this money on developing industry, building infrastructure. They did not spend this money on, they used this money to build a rentier state where they could acquire votes by including more people in the government. This was never a viable option. Now, to answer the question, the remark of honorable congressman, the government right now cannot address the economic crisis for the simple reason that the government cannot access vital loans. And the reason why we cannot access vital loans is because our Fitch rating is so low. We are in CCC. This is catastrophic. This means that no one will give us money. So the approach of the government is to adopt these kind of austerity measures and reduce the government spending, which it is doing, and which is why there are shortages in key goods. Now, on the topic of actual democratization, as I previously displayed, this political class failed and betrayed the revolution, democratically speaking. And even if you look at the individual parties themselves, look at Ennahda, look at all the other parties, do you see democratization in those parties? The same rule, the same leadership, the same party leadership that was 30 years past is the same leadership that is right now. There was no room that was opened up to youth. There was no room for alternative voices. Now, my ultimate question is, your class, I have so much respect for you personally, and I have so much respect for your class of politicians, for everything you guys did during the time of Bourguiba, for everything you guys did during the time of Ben Ali, all the sacrifices that you made. But isn't it time that your class has the humility to step away and say and leave the place for other people and alternative voices? Thank you.
Okay, Ayo, don't go. It's up to you now. Okay, it's up to you.
Omar?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, in our old office, we have 5 microphones wireless. This is just a temporary setting.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omar Khanat. I'm the executive director of the Uyghur Human Rights Project. So I will ask a question regarding the Uyghur Muslim population far away from Tunisia. So as you may aware, the Chinese government has been committing a genocide against the Uyghur people since 2017. Millions of people, Uyghurs, innocent people, without any reason, put in concentration camps. Hundreds of them died, and 1 million Uyghur children separated from their parents. And according to Australian Strategic Policy Institute, so between 2017 and 19, 16,000 mosques has been destroyed or demolished by the Chinese authorities. Thousands of imams put in jail and sentenced to long time imprisonments. What's happening is unbelievable. It's an assault on not only Uyghurs, it's an assault on Islam, and they have been burning hundreds of thousands Qurans openly on the streets. And unfortunately, many of the Muslim countries are silent in the face of this genocide. Even some of them, most of them actually, support Chinese government's policy in our region, which we call East Turkestan, in Chinese government called the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. So if you were the president of Tunisia, what would be your policy in this regard? And what is your suggestions for us Uyghurs to raise awareness in Tunisia about the situation of the Uyghur people?
Thank you.
This morning, I was also having this kind of discussion, and I said that I am extremely surprised by the fact that the government of the United States is supporting countries like Saudi and the Emirati regime. Why? Because the Saudi and the Emirati regime are promoting what I call the Chinese model of government. Chinese model, which means maximum of economy, minimum of freedom. This is the Chinese model. And this model, unfortunately, is extremely attractive for many poor nations, would say, hey, if we can move and we can be, get less poor, and if we can improve our economic situation like the Chinese, why not? Why not? And this was probably one of the most important argument of dictatorship in our country, saying, let's talk about economy, and then maybe we can talk about freedom later, in probably the next millennium. And now the Chinese model is very attractive. Countries like Singapore, like Dubai, like etc., are experiencing the same political system. So, and this is why I consider that the Chinese model is extremely dangerous for us, because in fact, we have tried this political system many times and it didn't work. We didn't have democracy, and we didn't have political economic development. But this is why I'm surprised that to see the support of the United States to this government promoting the Chinese model, which is extremely different and the contrary of the Western model of promoting economic development and freedom. Now, for me, China is a dictatorship. It's very clear. I was very shocked to see that the President Xi Jinping have received this man, this horrible man, probably the worst man in the world, Bashar al-Assad. This man is probably, I call him the Arab Neron. It's something like very close to Hitler or something like that. To see this guy, accepted everywhere, received high head of states in China is very shocking for me, and probably for millions and millions of Arabs. So we're not expecting anything from China. China wouldn't do any thing for promoting anything good for the Arab nation. And I do appreciate. Of course, I know that the crime against you said against Islam. In fact, it's a crime against humanity. It's not only against Islam. What's happening in I fully support the fight of the Uyghur, but unfortunately, the Muslims for the moment, are minority harassed in India also, not only in China, in Europe also. It's not very easy to be a Muslim in Europe for the moment, etc. So this. Really, it's a mess. It's very, very difficult situation. The only thing I can say that we support you because we feel how painful it's to be victim and to be systemized victim. But and I deeply regret also that nobody's taking interest. The same thing at the Palestinian problem. Look, also the Palestinian problem. Now the Palestinians are struggling against this apartheid state, and nobody's taking any notice of their suffering. So, in fact, you have many islands of suffering in the world, and to tackle all of them is extremely difficult, extremely painful. All what I can say is that Allah ma'akum, God with you.
Thank you. We have 4 names, so I'm going to ask him to ask all the 4 questions, and because we only have 10-15 minutes left. Muaz and then Naima, Anwar, and Bilal. Muaz.
Hello. Welcome, Dr. Marzouki and President Marzouki. My question is, it's been a taboo for every person I asked this question. They never came up with a straight answer. You know very well this revolution came for dignity and freedom. ثورة الحرية والكرامة. Now we have even worse situation after the school. There's no dignity, there's no حرية. I mean, triples worse or quadruples. It's a stalemate. The people are not rising. The unions are asleep. 3/4 of the people are asleep. They don't care about democracy or freedom. The West or our friends and allies abroad, I mean, maybe they're throwing democracy under the bus. We don't know. They don't care anymore. Democracy is not their first priority. Tunisians are left to fend off for themselves. You and I know they're part of the military or Quwa Solba are not very happy with what's going on. But they're maybe a minority. How could we convince the reasonable part of these Ahl al-Hall wal-Aqd? These are the ones who have the decision makers, the décideurs. How could we give them this, say, okay, we have Hawar Watani, we have a roadmap, we can proceed with a reasonable roadmap that will lead us out of this tunnel to lift support for this putschist and dictator, and to let this Hawar Watani take hold, this national dialogue take hold, so we can lead to a national salvation and national, consensus that will be satisfactory to all. Because you and I know Tunisians, they don't care after what they did, the first evolution, they said, okay, we invested in politicians. Now a lot of them are not interested in any politician or they want results, they want democratic, the economical progress. And you know very well the union leaders didn't deliver. They were against any economical progress. They were actually boasting that they said, Nobel Peace Laureate, what's his name? The winner, one of the winners, he said, we're glad we're up against the Troika every single day. We didn't let them rest one single day, verbatim. Abbas. He was bragging. He was a Nobel Peace Laureate. So how would you expect Tunisia to stand on its feet economically? We had 36,000 strikes during the first government of Jbeli, under which there's 3.8 GDP growth. Look where we are now, CC minus, Honorable Senator, Congressman, excuse me. So my question here, how could we convince this reasonable or the die-hard group among the military to step aside or to push Said to step aside and take hold momentarily until this national dialogue takes over, new election are organized, and Tunisia gets out of this tunnel. Thank you.
Okay, Naima.
Okay, welcome, Dr. Marzouki Mangas, and I want to let you know you're popular and well respected among us Tunisians, because first of all, you're an educated president. Second of all, you are patriotic and you defend democracy and human rights. My question is about the effort of the international community, what they are doing to the foreign names that you mentioned, or for the prisoner in Egypt, and especially in Tunisia, since I'm Tunisian. This dictator is after any free voice that raise and criticize or speak about the democracy and human rights. Before, during Ben Ali, the International Amnesty, they visited Tunisia and they visited the prison, the jails, and they reported what's going on. And that made a difference, big difference, putting pressure on him to put any pressure on him. what is the role of the international community now? The Human Rights Watch, International Amnesty. Is there any hope, or is it possible that groups of people visit this prisoner in prison and give us some information? Since we don't know much, some of them are old, or over 80, like Sheikh Rashid. Some of them are sick. They have chronic disease. They send them to hospitals, and their families, they don't know about them. So what can we do to put pressure on this dictator? And thank you.
Thank you. Anwar, and then Bilal, and then that's it.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Anwar Hadam, an elected member of Parliament of Algeria back in 1991. From the first wave of democratic revolution in the region in 1988. So to say that, yeah, it takes a long time to get back democracy, inshallah. First, I would like to thank Dr. Marzouki. Really, he did a great presentation. Jazakallah khair, it was good. Thank you. And as Islamist, I do support what he said, that there is a real diversity within the movement, within the Islamists. So we need to keep that in mind. Secondly, we need to keep in mind also that they have different history. Each region has its own history. In North Africa, what we call nowadays Islamists are the ones who were in the upfront for over 80 years fighting colonialism militarily. After that, they were in the forefront for fighting politically the colonialists. Hizb al-Shab, I speak particularly in Algeria. So they have a history. They are part, as you said, they are part of the social fabric of the Algerians. So those who would like to study the region, they have to understand the history. And also during the War of Liberation, I mean, if they were really, if the term Islamist was used, maybe the forefather of the revolution would have been called the Islamist revolution. All of them. So we have to understand that, to understand what's going on nowadays. There is this diversity. And thank you very much for that. We have to highlight that, not to brush everybody the same. And actually, the North African are more open-minded because of the history, close to Europe. So they come from we call Madrasa al-Maqasidiyya, so they are the purpose, the objective thinking. They translated that even in politics. So that's why we have totally different approach from our brothers in the Middle East. North Africa is really different. The other point I would like to make is that we need, I think, because we don't have time to elaborate, we need to think as our fathers during the revolution and the war against the colonialism, think as unit, North African unit. It is time for those revolution. Algeria, because we are still in revolution. It was the first democratic revolution, despite all what has been said, despite all the atrocities that happened. They try to blame the revolution about it. Nowadays, everything is is known now in the open. Even we have Khaled Nazar now that is officially before the court in Switzerland. They are accusing him of war crimes and crimes against humanity. He was the military. He was the one who did the military in 1991. So, and because of him, I was detained here for 4 years, based on secret evidence. And nowadays, he is before the court, alhamdulillah. So what I'm saying, it's time maybe for us, as North Africans, to think as our fathers and think about as a unit, how to work together to continue our struggle for democracy. And finally, and that I think Dr. Marzouki could try to ask the audience or let them know how they can help. How can we help and make democracy struggle as a domestic policy in America? It doesn't help only the people of North Africa and the Middle East, but the American society as well. Because the issue, it is not the GDP, the issue is to open markets and to have market where you can. So we need to have a stable North African, stable Middle East in order to really have a successful economic, even here in the United States. So how can we make the issue of democracy as a domestic issue in the United States? And thank you very much.
Thank you. Bilal, that's the last question.
I'll try to keep it brief. President Marzouki, it's my pleasure to meet you and thank you for being with us. I'm a university professor and I'm with the Arab Thought Council. I'm speaking in personal capacity. The question that I have, you use the term brutal elite, which is a model emerging in the Middle East all over the place, right? What is the recipe to get out of a brutal elite without compromising your human rights values? Because a brutal system will require force to get it out. And there is a need for a strong democracy to hold on to the state. And a strong democracy requires a strong legal system, constitution, and so on. So it's almost there is a need for a period to actually force it in place, to take root. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will try to summarize all those different questions in very few remarks. First of all, as I told you, the main problem for today is the situation of prisoner of war in Tunisia. Because people, behind bars, some of them are ill, some of them are very old, etc., etc. We really have to do something for them. And I really would ask you to do everything you can, whether you are in what kind of position, etc. Not forget our prisoner of war. But once again, this prisoner of war, it's behind them, there's a huge problem of entire people and an entire nation behind the bounds of the dictatorship. So about what should be my advice, if I may say, to our friends in the Western government, just one thing, please don't help our dictator because you're not helping our countries. We are not asking you to make the job. We will have to do the job, but the only thing we can ask you is please don't help them, because the only thing you are doing is that this regime would last, and this agony would be the agony of the society, not only the agony of the regime. My question also, my response also to the young man who was here. No, not you. He left. That it's it's easy to talk, to criticize. I was young. I know how easy it is. You politician, you didn't anything. I did the same thing. I was talking just like him. When I was at this age. But the new generation now is facing a huge challenge because really it's a matter of death or life. It's our generation in the Arab world, the generation in the Arab world. I was talking about the fact that it's up to your generation now to do the job, and it's very easy to criticize. I understood what you said because it's true. But the problem when you are in charge, when you're dealing with a specific problem, then you would say that it's much more difficult, to tackle the real problem than to talk about. So my advice to your generation is really to come back to the field, because sometimes I feel that, hey, what is the next generation? I don't see it. And there is lack of the generation. Now, for many generations, the only dream is to leave the country, to go to the States, to go to Europe, and we are a real hemorrhage, of our the best physician, the doctor, the best mathematician, etc. They are leaving the country. So, and who is going to be in charge in the fight for democracy if it's not the new generation? So it's up to you, and we wish you good luck, and be sure that it won't be easy. This is what about how to get rid of this corrupt elite? When you see what happened to the Syrian people, you see how this elite can be. Sometimes I say, I am. This is a real nightmare, to see what happened to the Syrian people just because they wanted to be free people, half of the Syrian peoples now is out of the country, and more than 1 million people have died, etc. Which means that this regime, this kind of regime, they would do everything, even to destroy the country just to remain in power. So this is why I think that your generation, because I wouldn't see that, I wouldn't see what the next, I hope, the triumph of democracy, that really it will be a mess. And then you will have to choose between two situations. If you try to revolt and to use violence, then you can be labeled as terrorist, and then it would be easier for this kind of regime because they have the weapon, they have the military, they have the police, and they will crush you. And if you use what I call the non-violent, Mandela, the picture of Mandela was behind my seat in the presidential palace of Carthage for over 3 years. Mandela is the man who is the man that I have always followed his path. And Mandela, the politics of Mandela was to say, hey, I would prefer to deal with you peacefully, and I will do everything in my everything I can do to stay, to remain, to discuss with, etc. But no way to deal with apartheid. Apartheid must go. And even if I have to fight, I would fight. And this would be my advice to the new generation. Try to stay as peaceful as possible, but you have to say that no way to deal with the council regime. And this is my problem with another. I say, hey, how can you accept to discuss with the council regime? It's like Mandela saying, hey, I'm going to discuss with de Klerk about half, my kind of apartheid, No, we have to cut with this. We have to say, I am not going to deal with any issue of Europe. You have to go. The ancient political system must go, and I am not going to find any kind of compromise with it. This would be the solution. If we have done this, I can assure you that maybe Tunisia wouldn't be in the same situation. But another one, no, we have to find a compromise. Damn it with your compromise. Hell with your compromise. I don't want your compromise. Because they tried to have this compromise that now they are in jail. And I have many times I've said, look, this is not the way of dealing. Imagine that Mandela has accepted to make a compromise about apartheid, saying we will have half apartheid, mild apartheid. No, we cannot have an apartheid. We have to get rid of apartheid. And we have to get rid of the political system. We cannot accept to work with Bajai, Sipsi, and so forth. So this would be my advice to the younger generation, that keep the path of Nelson Mandela. Now you ask me how to, the discussion is that I can assure you that those kind of discussions about this front against the dictatorship never stopped, didn't stop, and it's now on the way. And I don't know exactly what would happen, but I can assure you that we are discussing all the time. Somebody said that Tunisian people are sleeping and it's not no longer interested. I think you said the word. I can tell you something of my own experience. On 2010, just on the eve of the revolution, I heard exactly the same word. Oh, this Tunisian people is sleeping. We cannot expect anything. This dictatorship is there forever and forever. We'll never get rid of it, etc., etc. 1 year after we have had the revolution, and this people, it seems sleeping, in fact, was just, watching the moment that he will take to the street. And I think it's exactly the same thing now everywhere. People, people are intelligent, they're not stupid. They wouldn't go out, take to the street if they are not sure that now situation is right, for the revolution. I can assure you that you will have good surprises very soon. As far as I'm concerned, I remain optimistic because it's my job to be optimistic. Otherwise, if I'm not optimistic, it means that everybody would say we are defeated, we'll begin to cry and and this, of course, wouldn't solve any problem. So even if the situation is extremely dire, we have to be optimistic and we have to work. In fact, I'm saying something very common because if I give up, there will be a lot of people who are not giving up. And you can be assured that a society never surrendered and never accepted to commit suicide. People maybe commit suicide, but society never commits suicide. This is why I still believe that we're going to have new battles. I don't know what would be the end of this battle, but I know that we are going to have new battles, and I hope that we'll finish to win the war. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President, and we enjoyed this 2 hours with you. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, Khalid.